I'm the last one, still strapped in the chair in the corner. McMurphy stops when he gets to me and hooks his thumbs in his pockets again and leans back to laugh, like he sees something funnier about me than about anybody else. All of a sudden, I was scared he was laughing because he knew the way I was sitting there with my knees pulled up and my arms wrapped around them, staring straight ahead as though I could hear a thing was all an act. "Oh," he said, "look what we got here." I remember this part real clear. I remember the way he closed one eye and tipped his head back and looked down across that healing wine-colored scar on his nose, laughing at me. I thought at first that he was laughing because it was somehow funny. It looked an Indian's face in black, oily Indian's hair on somebody like me. I remember thinking that he was laughing because he wasn't fooled for 1 minute by my deaf and dumb act. It didn't make any difference to how cagey the act was. He was on to me and was laughing and winking to let me know it. "What's your story, Big Chief? You look like Sitting Bull on a sit-down strike." He looked to the acutes to see if they might laugh about his joke. When they just sniggered, he looked back to me and winked again. "What's your name, Chief?" Billy Bibbit called across the room. "His name is Bromden, Chief Bromden. Everyone calls him Chief Babroom, though, because the aides have him sweeping a large part of the time. There's not much he can do, I guess. He's deaf." Billy put his chin in his hands. "If I was deaf," he sighed, "I would kill myself." McMurphy kept looking at me. "He gets his growth. He'll be pretty good size, won't he? I wonder how tall he is. I think somebody measured him once at 6'7", but even if he is big, he's scared of his own shadow. He's just a big deaf Indian. When I saw him sitting here, I thought he looked some Indian, but Bromden ain't an Indian name. What tribe is he?" "I don't know," Billy said. "He was here when I came." "I have information from the doctor," Harding said, "that he's only half Indian, a Colombian Indian, I believe. That's a defunct Columbia George tribe. The doctor said his father was a tribal leader, hence this fellow's title, Chief. As to the Bromden part of the name, I'm afraid my knowledge in Indian doesn't cover that." McMurphy leaned his head down near mine, where I had to look at him. "Is that right, you deaf, Chief? He's deaf and dumb." McMurphy puckered his lips and looked at my face a long time. Then he straightened his back up and struck his hand out. "Well, what the hell? He can shake hands, can he? Deef or whatever. By God, Chief, you may be big, but you shake my hand or I'll consider it an insult. It's not a good idea to insult the new Bogus loony of the hospital." What he said that looked back over Harding and Billy made a face. But he left that hand in front of me, big as a dinner plate. I remember real clear the way that hand looked. There was a carbon under the fingernails where he'd worked once in a garage. There was an anchor tattooed back from the knuckles. There was a dirty band-aid on the middle knuckle, peeling up at the edge. All the rest of the knuckles were covered with scars and cuts, old and new. I remember the palm was smooth and hard as bone from hefting the wooden handles of the axes and hoes, not the hand you'd think could deal cards. The palm was calloused, and the calluses were cracked, and dirt was worked in the cracks, a road map of his travels up and down the West. The palm made a scuffing sound against my hand. I remember the fingers were thick and strong and closing over mine, and my hand commented to feel peculiar and went to swelling up out there on my stick of an arm, like he was transmitting his own blood into it. It rang with blood and power. It blowed up near as big as his, I remember. Mr. McMurray, it's the big nurse. Mr. McMurray, could you come here, please? It's the big nurse. That black boy with the thermometer has gone and got her. She stands there tapping that thermometer against her wrist. Watch. His eyes whirring while she tries to gauge this new man. Her lips are in that triangle shape, like a doll's lips ready for a fake nipple. Aide Williams tells me, Mr. McMurray, that you've been somewhat difficult about your admission shower. Is this true? Please understand, I appreciate the way you've taken upon yourself to orient with the other patients at the ward, but everything in its own time, Mr. McMurray. I'm sorry to interrupt you and Mr. Bromden, but do you understand that everyone must follow the rules? He tips his head back and gives that wink that she isn't fooling him any minute. You know, ma'am, he says, you know, that is the exact thing somebody always tells me about the rules. He grins. They both smile back and forth at each other, sizing each other up. Just when they figure I'm about to do the dead obvious, then he lets go of my hand.